There's something that's just mindlessly fun about the hack and slash genre. Loads of chaos and hordes of enemies, button mashing, cool combos, power-ups, and just a heck of a lot of chaos. Whether it's the big budget Devil May Cry or Bayonetta or a lesser known game like the one we're talking about today, Mitsurugi Kamui Hikae just got released on the PlayStation 4 and it came out on PC a few years ago. Is this port, though, worth your time, or is this independent release hack and slash just another one of those games you should just, well, ignore? As soon as we start this review, I have to immediately apologize for mispronouncing the name, as I'm sure I did. Throughout the rest of the review, I'm just going to refer to the game as Mitsurugi. In the game, you're playing as Misa, and you are the keeper of a holy blade. You're going against a rival known as Suzuka, who has a demon blade that she used to actually kill your former master, and, well, her former master as well. The blade has kind of a mind of its own, unleashing monsters and demons, and as Misa, you have to mow through the hordes of enemies, eventually trying to stop your friend before it's too late. The game is honestly a very bare-bones hack-and-slash experience. Instead of like large branching out levels where you're traveling through and battling different monsters, they're all arena-style stages. There are 6 levels in total. Well, honestly, there's 4, and the final 2 are just boss fights in themselves. In fact, one right after another without really a break in between. There is a few cutscenes along the way that kind of break up everything, but for the most part, it's kind of like a horde mode or survival mode for each of the game's main stages. In typical hack-and-slash fashion, you have your like weak, strong, and charge attacks, along with a few other moves at your disposal, like counters and guards, to try to keep things interesting, though after just a little while you'll probably find yourself relying on 1 or 2 combos at most to mow down the endless hordes. Each of the levels is broken up into waves. You have 5 waves of enemies and then a boss fight at the end of it. And the amount of enemies during each wave varies depending upon the difficulty and introductions of new creatures or monsters as you progress. Overall, there's a few types of monsters. I think there's 5 types total, with a few variants to the particular monsters or enemies that you're battling, so not a huge amount of variety. And as far as the levels themselves, while they are just these base arenas that you can't really travel outside of at all as you're battling these waves, there's only a couple of these. It seems like the first 2 levels are pretty much identical, just day or night, and you have a winter and spring version of levels 3 and 4, with then the final stage of the game kind of having like a boss type of arena. Like a lot of other hack-and-slash games, one of the other things that makes it fun besides just button mashing your attacks is figuring out how to counter and dodge your opponent's attacks. If you hold the L2 button down and move the joystick, you will move your character, whether she'll go left or right or backwards. And not only do you have to kind of do that to move away from attacks, you have to pick the right direction, as enemies will attack left, right, and then center, so you have to make sure that you're dodging accordingly so you don't end up getting clipped by those attacks. The game does feature an upgrade system, where you'll be upgrading not only moves that you already have, but buying new moves altogether, also increasing stuff like your health and katana gauge. Your katana gauge is used to, well, use certain types of moves, whereas kind of your quick attacks will refill your katana gauge. You can also get stuff to increase the amount of health or katana you get back by getting the various different power-ups that are dropped from the enemies once you end up defeating them. As far as the other upgrade moves, these usually involve adding either another button press to a particular move you already have, or giving you those new moves outright. It's very key that you buy the right ones, so you can experiment and figure out which ones are the best, but overall you definitely want to focus on increasing your strong attacks and health very early on, as the enemies, especially the bosses, can deal quite a bit of damage to you very quickly. One of the big elements of the game is the Zenshin Attack. When you beat down an enemy just enough, they start bleeding and flashing red, and if you press the R2 button, you will unleash a Zenshin Attack, which damages any enemy currently flashing in red. Now, you can upgrade this move as you progress in order for it to do more damage, but you can make a bunch of enemies bleed and then press R2 and wipe out all the enemies currently on the screen. This is actually quite satisfying, dropping large amounts of enemies enemies at that given time, but I did find that once I got a lot of enemies on screen and did it, the game did slow down at different points. The game also liked to slow down on a few key moments, especially during the final boss of the game, when that boss unleashed a couple of particular attacks. But overall, the game ran relatively well. There was occasional slowdowns, and the game never crashed on me. As to be expected, with only the 5 or so levels and being just wave after wave with only a little bit of other stuff to break up anything, it is a relatively short experience, taking me only an hour or so to beat it on the normal difficulty. Though with a game like this, what makes it fun though is playing the harder difficulties, and you can carry over your upgrades like a New Game Plus. And there are not just your easy, normal, hard, but there's also very hard and even a Inferno difficulty to keep things interesting, though I haven't made it quite up to those difficulties quite yet, though I can expect to be quite a handful since you can only upgrade your skills a tiny bit. I already have maxed out my health by the 3rd or 4th stage of my normal playthrough, so I can see it being really challenging with that revved up difficulty. Besides unlocking some of the upgrades, and you have to unlock the various difficulties as you won't be able to jump right to very hard or Inferno, you have to do hard first. And it was also a little bit annoying that as far as trophies go, when you beat the game on normal, you don't automatically unlock the trophy for doing easy. But playing the game on easy is a good way to get a whole bunch of extra skill points so that you can level up the rest of your abilities before tackling those harder difficulties. Overall, I had a relatively good time with the game. It does get monotonous very fast, and after I figured out a couple of moves, especially the one that allowed you to hold the R1 button and then mash triangle to unleash a really powerful attack, and after I found out that I could kind of cancel out of it and go right into that same combo over and over again, I was able to mow through enemies quite quickly. The thing is though, the game is hard to recommend for its current $11.99 price tag, considering you're only gonna get a few hours of gameplay overall out of it at most, and if you're one of those who like to play a game one time and then be done with it, the game takes an hour, maybe an hour and a half if you have a little bit of trouble at the bosses. There are plenty of other great hack and slash games available on the market, and even for the PlayStation 4, I would recommend checking out the redone versions of DMC or Devil May Cry 4, or one that's very similar since you're playing as a female protagonist. Check out the Onichimbara series. This is a long-running series that we have received a couple of games over here in North America, and the latest one that was released on the PlayStation 4 is leaps and bounds better than this game, though of course it depends on your budget, and the price difference, of course, is substantial, as Onichimbara was released as a full-price title, and this is a PlayStation Network download only. So in the end, I'm giving Mitsurugi a 4 out of 10. It's a little bit hard to recommend. There are much better games on the PlayStation Network currently available, though if you are a die-hard fan of the hack and slash genre, you may want to give this one a look, but it's probably not going to quench that thirst that you'll get from a much bigger game. But with that though, that's going to wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.